Hi guys, Ryan here. I'm just going to be showing you how I developed the head and personality for my Y2K VR tech dealer character through line and photo bashing techniques. There's going to be commentary throughout, so I hope you enjoy, and let's get on with it. What you're seeing on the screen at the moment is me just redesigning the character. So in kind of previous parts, kind of ended up with three refined concepts from a bunch of thumbnails that I did. So I'm just doing kind of a red line drawing to fix, in a sense, the pose. And then afterwards, using some grayscale and kind of chopping up the thumbnails that were simplified to get a very quick graphic read on the design, to have a better feel of what I want to go for. So in the blue lines here, what I'm doing is checking the proportional relationships and also the flow throughout the design. So the brackets were the 3-2-1 kind of golden ratio, big, medium, small, kind of proportional relationships between the elements on even just the limbs, different sections to make every part pleasing. And the larger ones, the larger shapes, that was looking at the composition of the character. Like, does everything fit in a triangle or a square? Where does the eyes go? How's everything arranged? Because you want your eye to flow throughout the design. So in the red lines there, I was just doing a quick kind of sketch to check the body anatomy underneath. You always want to do that when you're doing clothed characters, to draw on top of that, but also check every now and then when you kind of change the pose to make sure the clothes are sitting on the body properly, and also that there's thickness. Like, even if you're doing this like a skin tight suit, there's going to be some wrinkles or folds, or it's going to sit like even just a millimeter above the skin, and it creates that believability in a way. So here I'm just going through my reference, and if I don't have enough, which sometimes I have too much reference on my PureRef, I'll go on my Pinterest and keep on the side and just kind of search up something specific that I didn't have, or maybe it's at a high resolution, or even just at a certain angle that kind of makes it easier for me to draw. So for that arm there earlier, I got some reference to find the right angle, the right pose, because hands can be quite difficult. Everyone knows that. So I got an image to make that easier on me. So over here, I'm like, cool, I'm happy with the design. I'm going to slap some grayscale on it. So the kind of grayscale that I'm doing here is a simple grayscale wash, just a light gray, like 25 out of 100 in a sense. And I add a stroke to it to give it some stronger kind of line weight on the outside. So here, let's take the original head that I did a sketch over it, and I wasn't too pleased with what came out. So a nice little kind of hack you can do to speed up your process is to go on Sketchfab, search for a male or female head, pose it in the Sketchfab like browser viewer, and then just bring a screenshot out with the snipping tool, slap it in, and then you go into the morph tool, and you can either use Liquify, in like the morph tool Liquify. You can use like the regular kind of brush setting. You can use pinch and bloat to make things bigger or smaller. But what's really nice is with Photoshop in the Liquify tool, there's a panel on the right, which I use a bit later, I believe, that actually recognizes a human face, and it brings up little handles, and you can alter the eye sizes and the mouth, but it does it symmetrically. So when you do it manually with the brush, you have to make sure each side looks perfect, and it can get a bit messy. Another thing you can do, which is quite nice, is with that kind of grayscale you get out of that, is gradient map it. So you can bring an image in, or if you don't want to, you can like an alien creature. You can bring, instead of an image of a person, image of a fish or something, and you can plot different points in the gradient map, and A, change the color, or B, even change the value structure depending on the value of the kind of hue you put on those points in the slider for the gradient map. So here's a part which is a bit unfortunate. So I forgot to record the sketching process for this head, and it's probably one of the heads that I like the most. And a bit of an interesting kind of look to it. It's got some like a headband, these weird little ponytail things, and it's got some earrings and some piercings. And a bit of like a slightly aggressive, but also kind of cutesy, innocent look with the soft cheeks. I liked it. So what I'll do later on, I actually forget once again for this one specifically, ironically, record the process of the Photobash for it, but what it actually works out, because what I do is I'll slow down for that part as well and kind of walk through the layers and kind of talk about each one of the layers I go through. So on the left there, you can see the reference. So I collect a bunch of it in advance, and then hopefully before I start designing, I will curate that. So your designing process is happening even then. So you find the images that are kind of related to each other, or they give different things. So like in the top left there, it was the hair. Like the top there, I mostly like the hair, and the bottom, I'm looking at the faces. So that gives me the information that I want from that. So over there, I also didn't record the Liquify tool. So I'm just making notes here to show you what I did with the Liquify tool, like making the eyes bigger, bringing the nose in, the mouth in, the chin, bringing the head longer, making the neck thinner to match the reference. And the benefit of that, as opposed to overlaying the reference and then just manually doing a Liquify tool, is you get a slightly more unique result compared to just copying it directly or tracing over the image, etc. And even if you are, say, photobashing, you want to use more than one face. You want to blend faces, you want to change proportions and match the sketch you did, which was not ideally not traced. That gives you a much more unique look without directly throwing some random person in the world, because that's a person, those are people in the world, than throwing their face in, which would be a bit strange for them. So here, using reference and not directly tracing it, but using the 3D structure to get the proportions right is probably, I'd say, one of the ideal ways to do it. And then looking at another face to give a bit more information. So that's the process there, kind of blocking in the face using the Liquify tool over that rough 3D model took from Sketchfab. And there I did it. And then what I did is I accidentally, instead of clicking preview, I clicked cancel. So I had to do it all over again. And I got a slightly different result. And I think I liked the first result better, but that's life. You just kind of got to roll with it and actually get a different idea out. And you might end up liking it, you might end up not liking it. And there I tried out the kind of long ponytails, and it didn't fit the aesthetic of the character or the mood. So the best thing to do, if you don't like it and it doesn't seem like it's working, just cut it out entirely. Don't just stick with it because I've done it. Sunk cost fallacy. No. There's a phrase, kill your darlings. Some people like that, some people don't. But you kind of have to just get it out of it. Just get rid of it if it's not working for you. So this one also, same process. You've got the head. Liquify it. Get it looking good. And see on the right hand side there, that is the Photoshop Liquify face editing settings. So when you move that, it kind of edits the face symmetrically. It can be a little bit fiddly. So you'll get the case where you say, I want to move the forehead, and it just moves one side of the forehead. So use it at your own risk. Keep your arms in the vehicles at all times. And here I'm just bringing in, it's like a gradient map, the one, and bringing in a bit more information with layers, say overlay or just a straight layer, painting over to bring some more color in, some cools into the shadows, some grays, and some warmth into the cheeks, a bit more naturalistic. You put too much gray in the chin of a female character, it's going to start to look like stubble, so be very careful about that. So over here, heading more into the Photobash process for this one, where I'm kind of almost directly photobashing the hair and the ribbons, all that kind of stuff. And for the face, what I do is I take the images of the reference and superimpose them over what I kind of painted over originally, which gives you a different look. It just kind of enhances it, gives it slightly more of a photoreal feel in a sense. So the nice thing to do is to go with multiply and overlay to enhance the shadows and light, to really kind of make it feel like the hair is over the face. And when you do those shadows, you want it to match the form of the head. So when you do studies, etc., you'll get a feel for that. And what you can do as well is you can kind of trace a wireframe of the head, and it'll give you a better understanding of how those shadows are going to fall. So I forgo skull emoji. This is ironically the same head I forgot to record, but what I'll do is I will show the process. So I'll scroll down, and this is me locating and trying to identify which folder it's in, and also making sure I'm not going to overwrite and break anything. So one kind of good tip is if you feel a bit kind of antsy about editing something, especially in Photobash, like, oh, this is perfect, I don't want to mess up this image, just copy it. And once you've got a copy of it saved and locked and hidden, just go wild and edit it and have fun, because then you feel like, oh, I'm not messing anything up. I've got a kind of safe copy. So here I'm going through and just opening up all the different layers in semi-sequential order. So what I'll do as well is, you'll see this later because I'm going to photobash the rest of the heads, and you'll see this process sped up in full, is even the eyes, like the head was an original image that I morphed onto the sketch over the liquefied head, which gives you a unique result. And then the image gives you that kind of texture and high level quality, which you've then kind of adapted to the design you've come up with based on the references that you've digested. And then you get that kind of main base, and then change certain things, overlay another head, morph it on, and then mask it, and then bring it through. So you've got different elements maybe on the forehead and the cheek, and then directly bring in non-opacity, direct image of different eyes, maybe different nose, and a different mouth. In this case, I believe I overlaid a mouth to give it more texture on the lips, kind of a stronger look, which I think gives it a much better kind of personality in a way. So here, that's the kind of process. What I find as well is the line art. It's looking a bit strange, like you've got maybe a dark image underneath dark line art. You can set it to, I think, divide or subtract, and it changes to white. You can also just add an invert adjustment layer to it, and merge it to it. So there you can see integrating different eyes and different mouth. So what you want to do, if you bring, ideally what you'll find is an image that has very close color information. Maybe they're both pale or they're both dark skinned, etc. But what you find is a lot of the images, you might not realize it at first. They might be really warm, really blue, or their makeup might be, for some reason, like completely different color to the other person's. Maybe depending on, I guess, their skin tone, use different forms of makeup. So the way to integrate that would be to go your hue saturation, your color balance, and your levels, possibly your curves, but it can be a bit dicey using curves. And you want to overlay the images at full opacity for the most part, and then match as close as possible the colors. So you'll move the sliders in. You can do the midtones, which kind of change everything to a degree. You can also go into like shadows, midtones, and highlights if you really want to get a fine look. But at the end of the day, you're going to kind of use a soft brush to mask in and blend it into the rest of the face. You just want to get as close as humanly possible. Then you can even lower the opacity a bit, which will blend it. So they're just basically using that same process for all of them. And then going through and adding different accessories that fit the Y2K aesthetic, and then adding in a neck. You can probably find like the perfect neck image of Photobash and put on each of them. But for this, I'm trying to move at a decent pace. So just taking the color information from the head, and then whatever's kind of there, just balling off of that. That one's got a decent neck image, but also it can almost look a bit too real. So you want to do a little bit of painting over it. So it's kind of goofy when you put the extra eyes on for the first time and they're too big. It could look very, very strange. This one, I don't think I liked it. It looked a bit too strange. I think the problem with this one is the lighting is quite harsh, and B, it's almost too modelly. They're too gaunt, personally, for the style of the character. It just doesn't feel like a person on the street. It feels like this person's on a runway, and it just didn't work out. But that happened. So here I went back and I, quote unquote, fixed the first one to fit the rest of the kind of the quality level of the rest of them. Then fixing the graphic read, the hair and the headband are both too dark. So you kind of want to have a general rule of thumb, a 1-2-1-2 value read between elements. This is very good for kind of environment painting. Is you'll have light and then dark, light and dark. It helps things to read using that kind of contrast. And it couldn't even be low contrast, but still occurring to show overlap between objects, which you kind of want to use in all forms of painting in a way, using that general kind of 1-2-1-2 read. Obviously, once again, a general guideline, not a rule. There, did a face, did a hair. Once again, it didn't like it, so let me scrap it and go back to this face. I liked it, but at the same time, it's a very unique image, so I don't want to just use it directly, because then, say that person comes across the video, it's like, hey, that's me. What are you doing with my face? So, get a bunch of different face elements together, blend them, even blended like a different mouth in there, and kept the personality. I think the eye I might change later because it was a bit too red. And then going into presentation. So I've got a pretty standard presentation process. I get a black bar on the bottom, my contact information, project, kind of title, bottom left with a nice font. Which, by the way, if you want a unique font, you go online, various different sites, but also edit the font a little bit. Like the R didn't look like an R, it looked like an A. So I went in previously and kind of cut it up a little bit, changed it. So there, it's always good to kind of review designs with a red note process to see what worked, what didn't work, what elements you like, what elements you don't like. That gives you a kind of better understanding of what you want to take into the next stage. So here you can actually superimpose the heads in grayscale over the pose to see what works for the character. It also gives a nice thing, say you're doing this as a client work. You want things to be presentable, everything numbered, easy to see, so they can say, oh, number 4, number 3, I want the hair from number 2 and maybe the mouth from number 6 merged onto the head of number 1. And then they're like, okay, that's easy. Not the one with the scar, but maybe with this. And then it just gets a bit dicey. So that is the finished presentation. What I did was I kind of took all the elements, merged together, and made one final one that I liked, which you can see here in the center. That's the kind of finished head design for the character. Awesome. Thank you for watching, and have a look at the rest of the playlist to see the rest of the videos. And thank you so much. Bye now.